Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Inside the Therapy Room. I'm your host, Sam Sellers. I'm a registered therapist, a wife and a fur mama, and I am passionate about breaking down the barriers and stigma attached to therapy. I want to begin by first honouring the traditional custodians of the land we live and work on. Today, Kristy is on the land of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Dara people, and Sam is on Gundungurra land. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and culture of our First Nations people. We must always remember that the land below our feet is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today we are chatting to Kristy Southers. Kristy is a degree qualified coach and counsellor holding membership with the International Coaching Federation and registration with PACFA. Kristy also holds accreditation with the Equine Psychotherapy Institute as an equine-assisted psychotherapy practitioner. Drawing on EPI therapeutic modalities, Kristy integrates person-centered therapy, coaching and positive psychology from a trauma-informed perspective. Kristy believes that awareness, connection and healthy expression are important contributions to well-being, and that horses and connection to the land are profound teachers and facilitators of these skills. Kristy says, I feel privileged to work with every client and herd member on this breathtaking land of Amaroo. My wish for the world is that connection and compassion become the foundation on which we all stand. Today's episode is all about equine therapy. We hope you enjoy joining us inside the therapy room. Welcome, Kristy. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
I'm so excited about this episode. I specifically went looking for this particular modality because I don't know a lot about it, but I do know just how powerful it can be. And so I went specifically looking for an equine therapist and found Amaroo.
Yeah.
So tell me, let's start with, what is equine therapy?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yep.
What is equine therapy? It can be many, many, many different things. So equine therapy is like a big umbrella term, and then there's lots of things that fall in underneath it. Mm-hmm. I work in the capacity as an equine assisted psychotherapist. But at Amaroo, we also have equine assisted learning practitioners, and they work more in a psychoeducational and present moment here and now personal development perspective. Yep. And then I guess there's a bunch of other things within equine therapy where it can be physical therapy or I'm not even sure what exists out there really, but lots and lots of different services can be called equine therapy. So yeah, if you're looking for an equine therapist, you probably need to look at all of the finer detail to work out that it actually matches what your needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when we use the term equine, we're talking about horses, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there are probably a stack of people out there that are probably going, what even is that? But we will get into those details of what it actually looks like. Mm-hmm. What drew you to this type of therapy?
Well, it was interesting. I wasn't searching for it as in a professional capacity. It was during COVID lockdowns, and my daughter unfortunately became very unwell with an acute and short-lived eating disorder, but it was quite significant. And she was in hospital for a time, and it was devastating and rocked us as a family, as it would for anyone. But she was only 11 at the time. And so I went searching for some kind of support for her.
Yeah.
And I think I was just there in my office, just Googling everything under the sun. And equine therapy just came to mind, and I really didn't think that I'd even find anything that was local and accessible or even open during lockdown, or like I was just stabbing in the dark.
Yeah.
And anyway, Amaroo Equine came up, and I rang and I spoke to Belinda, who's the owner and director of Amaroo, and it was still only a baby business at 7 months old when I rang her. Actually, probably less than that.
Yeah.
And we had a great chat, and I took my daughter out there, and I'm not entirely sure who benefited the most. I mean,
Oh,
it was wonderful that we were able to go out there during lockdown, and being an outdoor service, that it was still open, and also being mental health support, it was
yeah.
something we could engage in during lockdown. And so it was wonderful for us to get out of the house, and it was wonderful for my daughter, and she did equine assisted learning with Belinda, and that it was just so wonderful. And I just loved being able to get out there and be on the property and just sit there and wait for her to finish her session. Just being out there was brilliant for me. um,
Yeah.
that Belinda and I were talking, and yeah, before I knew it, I was starting to do some work there.
Wow. I
Yeah.
love when things happen naturally. And I think that's one of the biggest things that has sort of connected all of these episodes is that the niche tends to find you. You don't tend to go looking for the niche. And so I think that's when you know that you've hit your sweet spot, is when it naturally finds you.
I think you're right. I've
Yeah.
always said, when you're on the right track in life, things just seem to fall into place. They can't,
Yeah.
it's almost like they can't help it. It just
Absolutely.
lays down in front of you when you keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, two and a bit years on, and I'm still at Amaroo and loving it, and the business is growing incredibly,
Amazing.
incredibly. Yeah.
Who
It's been
benefits from equine therapy?
everyone.
I love
Every,
when people give me that answer.
I know, so I'm sure most people do.
Ah,
Um, I guess the specific demographics of people that benefit from equine therapy would be, well, it's wonderful for small children
mhm.
uh, and young, small young children. I mean, as I said, my daughter was 11 when she first started going along, and that, pardon me, that in comparison to being in a room-based setting with a social worker was like day and night.
Yeah.
She's outside, she's able to run around, she's able to use her body as children do, in in whatever it is they're engaging in. She was able to see these beautiful animals and touch them and feel them, and help with, feeding them, or whatever task was to be done at the time. And the healing nature of the land, which is really really sort of deeply sacred to me, is that just being on the land
Mm,
itself is and being able to connect to it, it has an inclusion, a belonging feeling and sense. And I think that children naturally just go to that place. They go to that place of connection with the outdoors a
yeah.
lot of the time. And so I think that demographic connects really well with equine therapy.
Mm,
But from a more therapeutic lens, equine therapy is wonderful for people who have experienced trauma,
mm,
for a bunch of reasons. But one of the key things is the regulation component, that we need to be in a regulated state.
yeah.
We need to be really present here and now, and developing and practicing those skills, as you'd know, as a therapist, is
Mm,
really wonderfully supportive for somebody that's living with the effects of trauma. Um, yeah, just building that capacity to be in regulation.
yeah.
So the other part of that is that horses are not humans, and are therefore safer to connect with
Yes. Yeah.
when someone who has experienced trauma,
Yeah.
usually at the hands of other humans.
Yeah, and I would imagine that there would be, I mean, we know very well the effects of just even animal touch, not specific to any, animal in general, is great for regulating the nervous system. And so, but I would imagine there would be an element of, um, for those who have, I guess, learned messages that emotions are unsafe or are dangerous, that this is a really safe and gentle way for them to rewire that emotions can be safe, that state that they're in is not one to fear. But I would imagine this would be a really gentle way to do that.
Yeah, yeah, I think gentle is a good word for it, because I think the horses or the animals, their reactions to your emotions are
Mm,
non-judgmental.
mm,
And with humans, we risk that all the time, that the judgment for what we're experiencing, the judgment for what we're feeling, and that risks being hurt again.
mm,
Whereas you walk into a paddock and you're crying, tears in your eyes,
yeah,
the horse is not going to look at you sideways and
yeah,
you know sort of indicate that there's something strange or unusual about you.
yeah.
Not at all. And so it's much more safe to express that
Mm.
fear of being hurt again.
Yeah, and not necessarily needing to have words either. I think being able to process emotion and process trauma without actually having, for some people, finding language or actually verbalizing their experiences is incredibly triggering, and can be re-traumatizing. Um, so I would expect, the fact that the horses don't require you to speak
Mhm.
would be a really wonderful aspect of that,
It
sort of
is,
trauma healing.
for sure. And that's one of the experiences that people can have, is that they can, I mean, I've had full sessions with people that have, where they have definitely not disclosed any detail about the
Yeah.
traumas that they've experienced.
Mm,
They've been able to connect to it in a way that is beneficial for them, but as you say, without words.
mm,
It's just about being in the moment and being able to experience what it is they're experiencing with the horse,
mm.
and with me as a support person, but not necessarily a that somebody that they have to go through detail with, and they have to,
Yeah.
yeah, as you know, it's hard to put into words a trauma experience anyway.
Mm.
Often that part of the brain goes totally offline,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
expressed in words, and not in a story or a narrative sense anyway. And so
Mm,
you could say random words, like just a word,
mm.
and take that one word into the paddock with the horse,
Yeah.
that and be there with whatever that one word is that might encompass a huge amount of experience for someone. And then they can come out and unpack what happened for them in the paddock, not necessarily what happened to them
Mm.
in the moment.
Is it one of those things that, I can imagine there are probably people going, it sounds all a little bit too good to be true, Is it one of those things that um you can't really understand until you've experienced yourself or witnessed somebody else experiencing it?
I think so. I think, I mean, I think there'd probably be different levels of understanding.
Yeah.
I'm sure from your therapeutic background, you can put together all of these little
Yeah.
elements of therapy and see how it connects to this experience with the horses. But yes, I think that it's an experiential therapy.
Yeah.
The model that I'm trained in, that we're all trained in at Amaru, is the equine assisted psychotherapy, is the Equine Psychotherapy Institute
Yeah.
model. Um, and that is based on, well, largely Gestalt therapy, which is an experiential therapy as well.
Yeah.
So yes, talk therapy, but it's about experiencing the moment. It's about experiencing your emotions. It's about letting them be. It's about experimenting with new ways of doing things. So it's a little bit more interactive as a therapy anyway, Gestalt therapy, and so it just blends really nicely with the idea of connecting with horses, because it is an experience. So
Mm,
once you've experienced it, then you can understand it. But you're right, sometimes it does seem too good to be true,
yeah.
because there's no, I mean, I have said this many a time, but sometimes the only way I can explain the horse's contribution is magic.
Yeah.
it just feels like magic.
Mm,
They just know.
mm.
They bring something that that I can't see sometimes,
Yeah.
that the person with me can't see. I mean, and sometimes it could just be really coincidental, but the amount of the coincidences that I've witnessed,
Yeah.
no, there's more to this.
Yeah.
Would you like a couple of examples?
Yes, I would love them.
Okay, I was thinking about this before. So there was, I remember early on when I started doing training, when I started doing this work, and I had a young person, a young adolescent who was with me, who was often very, I mean, in Gestalt we'll call it confluent behaviors. So quite reserved. And, you know, if you say, would you like to go in the paddock? Would you like to do this? And they, I don't know. I don't mind. It's okay. I'm not sure. That kind of response. And we were in the paddock, and one of our beautiful horses, Pearl, was licking my hand. I was letting her just lick my hand as we were talking and engaging, and I could see this young person pop their hand out a couple of times, but Pearl didn't quite come over. It wasn't engaging with them as they were with me. And I asked them something about, what would you like Pearl to do right now?
Yeah.
And she and then this young person was a little uncertain, typical of the confluent behaviors. And I said, it's okay. Maybe if you would like Pearl to do something, maybe you could just say it. She might
Mm.
not understand, she's a horse, but maybe you could have a go at saying that. And I stepped away for a moment, and I heard them say to Pearl, I want you to lick my hand too.
Oh.
And honestly, Pearl just went over and did it.
Oh.
And I thought, that is like,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy. It's just magic, because
Yeah.
how did Pearl know that that's what this person had asked?
Yeah.
Pearl know that that was the time to do it? How did Pearl know to leave me and go and do that?
Mm.
Um, it was just a moment, and I thought, gosh, that's incredible. And then I had another experience with another young adult who I didn't know very well. Actually, I think it was maybe the first or second session. And one of the horses, unfortunately, it was only one of our little minis, stood on her foot, just on the end of her shoe a little bit. And almost never happens.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, are you okay? Is that all right? And then she looked a little upset. So we went outside the paddock and, you know, made sure her foot was okay and everything. And it just unraveled this amazing sort of disclosure of domestic violence.
Right.
And so it sounds like it's just maybe coincidental, but that experience was it because it all started with her saying, do you think Winnie wanted to hurt me?
Mm.
I said, absolutely not. I actually think that was a real accident. I think that,
Yeah.
you know, that was a lapse in our awareness at that time.
Mm.
And so we started to talk about that. And then, you know, some tears started and some revelations came through, and disclosures of what she'd experienced. And
Yeah.
without the horse's contribution in that moment, how, like, I think it can expedite the process.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Not that I would advocate for horses next to us.
Oh, I
Well,
mean,
and it just wasn't hurt. She wasn't hurt. It was just and Winnie is our little lovely miniature. She's only teeny tiny.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
dear.
And then from a personal experience, I remember when I started doing the training, I went into the paddock. I was going into the paddock before clients had arrived, and the day before I had received a bunch of my equine psychotherapy textbooks.
Mm.
They'd arrived in the mail. And I looked at them all and went, oh, I don't know any of this. Oh my goodness, but a lot to learn. And I put them aside. And I went into work the next day. And then the horses kept walking away from me. So go into a paddock and the horse would walk away. And I'm like, okay, all right. Going to the next paddock and the horse is walking away. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And I went back to the barn and I spoke to Belinda and a couple of colleagues. I said, something going on with the horses right now. It's walking away from me. And Belinda, I think, looked at me and she said, I think the horses are okay. What's happening for you?
Yeah.
And then a little bit more unpacking with one of my other colleagues, and I was like, oh, suddenly because of these books that had arrived, and I thought, wow, that's a lot of knowledge that I don't yet have.
Yeah.
In my mind, I guess there was a an unconscious thought about, I don't know what I'm doing.
Overwhelm. Yeah.
And so the horses are like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, do you? I'm just going to walk away.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean,
Mm,
I don't think I have the firm belief that nothing in therapy is coincidental or accidental.
mm,
Everything happens because of something that happens prior to it, and whether what happens prior was done intentionally or not is kind of irrelevant if it, if it sort of it pulls at the thread of the garment, so to speak. And it just
mm.
like when you start pulling at it, more and more starts to come out. Um, why, why horses? Because, there are a lot of animals in the world, right? And, in a few weeks, I'm chatting to an animal assisted therapist who works with dogs. But why horses?
Well, I'm sure lots of different animals have their unique skills and gifts that they can bring to therapy
Mm,
interactions. For horses, with horses, they are incredible because they often evoke strong emotion in people. And that's because they're really, oftentimes, apart from our minis, they're big. They're
yeah.
really big creatures and they're powerful. And they're kind of, they evoke a sense of awe a lot of the time, or sometimes fear. Often that's another one. Awe and fear, probably in equal measure. Um, and also desire and longing. It's like beauty. It's people generally are drawn to horses, whether they want to necessarily be right in there and interacting with them,
Mm,
or whether they just want to look at them. Uh, People want to see them, and so there's that component of it. But there's also, I think, this amazing thing within horses. They're sentient beings, so they feel things. They really feel things, and they're prey animals. So they're really big, and yet they're a prey animal. So they're on the lookout for danger. They live in a constant state of awareness. They're
mm,
always in the present moment, and they are because of because of that. We have to have a healthy respect for for their size and for their needs.
mm,
Um, we can't we can't not pay attention to that, because that would be dangerous if a horse is frightened from something around us and decides to move quickly and we're unaware of that. Then that puts us in danger, and them sometimes too. They don't want to hurt, but they're
yeah.
not aggressive animals in any way. They're not
Mm,
trying to attack anything. They're not predators. Um,
yeah.
so that's a unique kind of, I guess, skill set that horses have. But the other
Yeah.
beautiful thing is that they're herd animals. So just like humans are social creatures,
Mm,
they are social creatures. So they want to connect. They're looking for their herd. They bring us into their herd. We're an extension of their herd members. And they
mm,
rely on each other, and they're constantly co-regulating each other. You'll see one horse is sleeping while the other horse is standing nearby. They're looking out for each other, and they go towards each other. So, like in healthy attachment, they turn to each other for regulation and for connection and to feel good and safe.
mm.
Um, so they're just some of the specifics about equine nature
Yeah.
that makes them truly special.
I don't think the awe and fear I completely can resonate with. But I don't think I realized, I guess, that, yeah, I guess in human terms we would call it healthy attachment, but that ability to be so aware of another horse's need in that moment, to then adjust what you do to fit that need, is a really, we would say that that's a really cognitive thing to do, but actually it's a real energy thing to do.
Ah, the energy. Yes.
Yeah. And, I often find, I have Naya, who is she's not an animal therapy trained dog. She's just got a sweet nature. And so she blends well in here. But I often find that, um, I get a real impression of somebody new that I'm meeting if she is very standoffish, or if she won't go near them, and so it's not that they're, a bad person or anything. It might be that they're feeling extremely anxious, or it might be that they feel like they're holding a lot inside, and Naya is just a bit overwhelmed by going near them. And so you learn so much by, I often will say that Naya's got more intuition than I ever
Yeah.
will have in this
Yeah.
room. And it probably is the same for you with the horses, that they have, the infinite sort of
Oh, yeah.
connection and intuition that, humans would only dream of having,
Oh,
really.
it's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think they can give us clues as a therapist in
Mm.
session as to what's actually happening for a client, because they often have somebody say, "No, I'm fine,"
Mm.
and they look fine. And
Yeah.
so why is the horse all jittery?
Yeah.
Horse moving around a lot. Why is the horse just a little bit antsy? Or the horse with us might be super duper calm,
Mm.
standing still, happy to be groomed, happy to be patted. And then the other horse in the paddock, or the one in the paddock next door, is running around, got the zoomies, doing
Mm.
something completely different. But the horse we're with is calm. And that, to me, that's happened a number of times. And I think that I don't necessarily always point that out to a client, but
Yeah.
I will notice it
Mm.
and think, okay, well, maybe there's something a little incongruent here going on for the client. And
Yeah.
there's actually some anxiety happening inside, but they're really, really good at living with it and masking it.
Mm.
Yeah, so the horses will tell a lot. And the other thing is, sometimes I walk away from a session where I might feel a little more drained, or a little
Yeah.
more, um, I don't know, affected by that session. And instead of just carrying that on my own, I might walk out of the paddock after that time with that client, and then I'll watch the horse go, and
Mm.
they're out breathing and
Yeah.
regulating, and they're letting go of all of that energy, and they're having a
Shake
roll.
it off, Kristy. Shake it off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, validate.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, that was a session. Yeah, let's
Right.
pick it off. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast is called Inside the Therapy Room. I guess, we are inside the therapy paddock or farm or land.
Mhm.
But what sort of things are you doing in sessions? You've mentioned a few things: brushing, just, talking to the horses. But what sort of things are happening in those sessions?
Yeah. Well, sessions look different every single time, every
Mm.
single person, every single session. Um, and yeah, okay, so they can look really, really different depending on where a person is at.
Yeah.
So depending on where they arrive at that day, they may be willing for an equine interaction, or they might not be.
Hmm.
So sessions can involve being in a paddock with a horse for almost the entire duration. Sometimes it's about talking and unpacking things while we're both connecting with and grooming a horse. Just the simple act of touching
Hmm.
is sometimes enough calming and regulation for a person to then be able to share.
Yeah.
So that can happen. But if we're following sort of the true Equine Psychotherapy Institute model, there is a bit of a process where we go through some regulation and grounding, which is always really part of anything that we do before we go into a paddock. It's
Mm.
about calming our nervous system, because the horses will pick up on our nervous system and they will respond in some way. And we want to make sure that we're putting ourselves into a safe environment, and we also want to practice our own regulation skills and
Yeah.
to encourage our participants and clients to do the same. So we'll do that. And the way that looks before we go into a paddock will be completely different depending on the person. So for a 5-year-old, it might be about stomping your feet on the ground, now pressing them really hard into the ground, now wiggling your toes in your boots, and
Yeah.
going through the process of doing regulation, but in a playful manner. And out breaths, let's out breath like a horse, and so we'll be doing that sort of thing. Or, but with an adult, obviously it'll be like the horse is out breath. Why don't we just take a nice, long, slow, let it, exhale through your mouth? It'll be a lot different if it's an adult. With kids, there's lots of different ways to do it. Sometimes we blow bubbles.
Yep.
So we have bubbles there, blowing them outside the paddock. But, that's a wonderful way to engage. Occasionally I've done that with adults though too. Those who feel uncomfortable doing it. Yeah, so that's part of it. So regulation is a really big part. Grounding, regulation, connecting to the land, and looking at Amaru is on the most beautiful property that you'll almost ever experience. The beautiful escarpment of Blue Mountains, just that ancient land that is Megalong. It's very spiritual, that land, and so connecting and letting people have a moment to notice it. That's always part of session. And then there's a bit of talking involved, or working out where a client is at, but then we offer what we call in the model an equine experiment, though we like to call it equine experience because I don't want anyone to feel like they're an experiment. But it is an experiment in the sense that it's, let's interact with the horse and let's experiment with what's going on here.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, so it could be a projection experiment. So somebody might be feeling, nobody likes me. Nobody ever likes me. Every time, okay, so why don't we go into the paddock? Why don't you go into the paddock? And depending on their capacity, they can go into the paddock on their own, and take that thought in with them. And notice what happens when they're holding on to that thought, or they might exacerbate that thought or that experience. What happens in your body when you're so somatic inquiry is a big part of our regulation and a big part of our work as well. And so what happens in your body while you're thinking nobody likes me? And we exaggerate what they're doing. It might be caving in the chest, it might be looking down, it might be walking slow, it might be not looking up much. And so an experiment might be to go into the paddock with the horse and exaggerate all of those things we just noticed.
Yeah.
Walk in with a hunchback if you have to. Walk in, just only using your eyes, not using your head to look up and around. And then letting them experience what the horses bring to that.
Yeah.
Did they walk away? Did they actually come up?
Yeah.
What happened for you as you stood there? And that will be as nuanced and individual as possibly can be. What some experiences through that.
I think it's probably really easy for people to think that equine therapy is just, going and having fun with horses, or, patting them, or I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there is an aspect of equine therapy that is about the practical side of taking care of the horses as well.
Particularly, but it can be.
Okay, maybe that's just in the movies.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was getting to is that it is still very targeted. There is still that, I think it's probably easy to forget the therapy side of the equine therapy, but it is still very targeted in terms of there are still things that you are looking at and exploring in every session. It's just the horses are used as a tool almost.
Yeah, well, and I don't mean to make you wrong by saying this.
Oh no, that's okay.
We really, really don't like to use the word use or a tool. The horses are our co-facilitators. They're our co-practitioners. They're our co-workers. And, in Gestalt therapy too, we talk about field theory and horizontalization. So the horse, the client or participant, myself, the land, anything that's happening in that moment in the experience that's interacting, all on an equal level.
Wow.
So what the horse brings is as important as what the client brings. The bird singing in that tree is it's bringing something. Everything that's happening in that moment, it's like you said before, nothing happens by coincidence, right? It's all there, and we can't ignore it, and we don't like to prioritize one over the other.
Yeah.
Me as a therapist, not more important, not more necessarily even knowledgeable than the horse
Yeah.
or than the participant that's there. So we always have great respect for our equine facilitators, and so they definitely are part of our sessions, but they're not a tool that we use. They're they're really important. And you mentioned something about the movies before and what people do, and that we do. So depending on the client's capacity and their experience with horses and what's relevant to the work that they're doing, their personal work, there is stuff we can do. So the energy of working with a horse when you're leading, so haltering, leading, and we do everything with our horses by consent.
Yeah.
So there is no dominating over the horses. There is no you will be halted and you'll be coming to the arena kind of mentality. No. The horses are free to choose yes and no. We attune to them and have relationship with them in a way that is a role model to our relationships with humans. So attunement to the horse and what they're telling us through their communications, which is mostly body language and just being really in tune with our somatic reactions to their communications, is what guides us to work out what is the horse able to contribute in this session. And so there is lunging, which is an energy interaction that people can play around with horses in a round yard. So, playing and experimenting with your energy up, your energy lower, communicating that with the horse and how fast they're moving around, how you're able to bring them to a stop and yourself to a stop. You can slow down a horse with your breathing and it's all about connecting to that. So it's skill building. These are all regulation skills, and it's attunement skills, awareness skills, also boundary skills, because you need to be assertive and clear, very clear in your communications. So the more you do all of this with a horse, the more skills you're developing, and everything we always say, everything we do is about relationship. And so what you're doing with a horse is transferable to your relationships outside. So yes, and sometimes we do mounted sessions, but that again is all about furthering your own awareness and attunement and relationship with the horse in that experience. It's not about developing riding skills.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, I guess, as a therapist, the awareness that you have in a session. I feel like your awareness in your sessions is like on steroids. Because, I'm sitting in a little room with, one, maybe two, maybe three if I'm working with a family, humans, and a dog. But, my awareness is very contained, I guess is probably a good word to use. Whereas your awareness as the therapist is taking into account things that most people would not even think, oh, there's a bird singing over there. Like, to sort of have that awareness of it, that's like next level, Kristy. That's next level awareness.
Oh, it is actually.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot of awareness, and awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
Awareness is one of the key psychoeducational topics that we cover in in a lot of our workshops as well. Because without awareness, we don't have choice.
Yeah.
Awareness gives us choice. Without awareness, we just react. We don't choose our response. And so, yes, you're right. There is a lot to be aware of.
Yeah.
And that's something that we encourage our clients and participants to be doing as well. Take in everything that's happening around you, because it's all
Shared awareness.
What was that? Sorry.
Shared awareness, it sounds like.
shared awareness.
Yeah, that it's not just you being aware, that it's, the people who are participating as well, they're being aware.
Yeah. And I think that another key component of that is our connectivity, connected. And I think this goes into the, that part of therapy, or that part of human nature, is that we're actually all connected. We're connected to each other. We're connected to the land. We're connected to the animals. They're all connected to us. We can't escape the connectivity. And yet in today's life, the way that we live our lives and the way that society operates is actually, it's quite isolated. We isolate and cut ourselves off from different, from nature, and we're not connected to it. So we're kind of cutting off parts of our awareness of self. So yeah, developing that skill and being able to pay attention to how we connect. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier too, I think that links into belonging.
Yeah.
When we're connected, we realize that we actually belong.
Yeah, there's a sense of purpose, there's a sense of ease, that, we belong here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we belong
Absolutely.
here on this land. This land belongs to us. We belong to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, humans and social creatures, we look to belong. And
Yeah.
when a lot of the time that people are coming, for therapy, there's often elements of loneliness,
Yeah.
elements of not fitting in, of not having a place to go and and a person to be at home with. And if we, and I mean that in a metaphorical sense, not,
Yeah.
but if we develop our skill to be able to connect to the land and the animals and nature around us, it just gives us a place to belong anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
Mm.
What myth are we smashing today?
Well, it's interesting because you touched on it. The myth that equine therapy is just simply being in a paddock with a horse or just riding a horse.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that. There's
Yeah.
a lot to it. But that's not denying that being in a paddock with a horse doing your own thing or with somebody doesn't have some kind of beneficial
Yeah.
effect for you. But there is a lot more that goes into it. And I think that I would just then caution anyone looking to engage in equine therapy, that it's important to have a look at the practitioner, to have a look at what actually where are they trained? What is it that they're actually doing? What do you hope to achieve? And is that the right match for you?
Yeah.
Because equine therapy is a growing field around the world and through Australia. And
Mm.
it's unregulated at this point because it's new. It's not new, but it's
No. Yeah.
and so yeah, the regulation bodies are not yet caught up with keeping track of it all. So there's a lot of different models out there, and there's a lot of people that will say they're doing equine therapy that have done, I
Like
don't
a
know.
quick online course or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Or they've gone and done maybe a long-term course of some description, but it might be more horsemanship.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, or something like that. Or it might be, I think there's a couple of courses out there too, which, would have their merits depending on what clients are looking for in the
Yeah.
session. But, they're like an animal care or like animal studies, and then they do like a unit or two in counseling on top of that.
Yeah, okay.
So, there's benefit to that. It's just about working out whether it's the right fit. We see the Equine Psychotherapy Institute in Australia as the gold standard, but it was written by Meg Kirby, or developed by Meg Kirby, who is a licensed social worker and Gestalt psychotherapist, and she created this model, but everything is based on evidence-based therapy modalities.
Yeah.
And so it's got some legs to stand on in terms of credibility within the therapy industry. And to be an equine assisted psychotherapist through that model, you need to have counselling, psychology, or social work qualifications. And then this is your postgrad
Yeah.
accreditation.
And I think, it's important to note on that it's not about discrediting the other things. It's just about safety precautions, realistically. When I talk about there is a real difference between psychology, psychotherapy, counseling, coaching, mentoring. All of those things have their place and have their merit and their role in society. But they're different, and that's okay. It's okay that they're different. It's just about making sure that what you need, the person that you're working with, is qualified and trained to be able to do that, because it's about, safety, emotional safety, and in your case, also physical safety as well. But I guess it also is coming back to there is a difference between something being therapeutic and something being therapy. And I think that tends to be the common thread when I'm talking to, I spoke to a drama therapist last week, and, the difference between, drama being therapeutic and drama as therapy is different. I guess it's the same with art or any different modality. There is a difference there.
It definitely is. Yeah. And as you say, it depends on the person and what you're looking for and what you're hoping to get out of it. And, you'll actually see on the Amaru website or anything that we post, we actually don't use the term equine therapy.
Mm.
We will use the term equine assisted learning.
Yep.
So, you're learning through the assistance of the
Mm.
horse and your practitioner, and it's about personal development, or it's equine assisted psychotherapy. So it's psychotherapy,
Mm.
but it's it's with
Horse
the support
assisted.
with the horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll use those terms, and they are the terms that the Equine Psychotherapy Institute use as well. And I think that those terms are actually used by a few different training methods throughout the world. I'm pretty sure they use a similar, that EAL, EAP,
Yeah.
description in the US as well,
Mm.
for some different approaches. So
Yeah.
so equine, that's why I said to start with equine therapy, such a big, broad,
Yes.
you know,
Umbrella term.
yeah, it really is. And, and there's people out there I know of, counsellors that have not done anything specific to do with equine psychotherapy, as in specific training, but they're counsellors and they choose to do counselling in the
Mm.
paddock or whatever,
Yeah.
outside in nature. And that's their unique and own take on
Mm.
equine therapy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it just looks different. Just
Mm.
looking at the detail is probably the caution within that myth.
Mm. Yeah.
It's just being around a horse.
Yeah. It's much bigger than that. It sounds, I guess, that umbrella term of equine therapy is just about connection with the outside world and connection with horses.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of things that can fall underneath that. Some structured, some unstructured, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, definitely.
amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining me.
It's okay. It's a pleasure. I could talk
I
about it. I love it.
I love hearing people talk about what they love, because it just comes naturally, it comes easily. And I have said this to a few of the episodes where I just love things that are not just sitting in a room and talking, because as a talk therapist who loves what I do, I there's more out there, and it's okay that there is more out there, and sometimes that can be just as or more powerful than what you expect it to be. So I love giving, I guess, what would be considered alternative routes of therapy and healing that platform, because it's needed. And animals are great. I mean, I work with humans all the time, but let's be honest, animals are much, much better than humans. We
Oh,
don't, sometimes I go, we don't deserve you when I look at Naya. We don't deserve animals, because they're just so pure, and,
I know.
they're beautiful. So,
I know the
And
benefit of animals. It's people often say that, they'll come in like, oh, so much nicer to be around animals than humans.
yeah, absolutely.
I love humans.
Oh, yes, so do I. I mean, I work with humans every day. I love humans as well, but
Yeah.
there is
Yeah,
this
but
purity and I mean, when I talk about Naya, I sort of go, there's this unconditional love,
mm,
regardless of the mood you're in. She is so happy to see me at the end of the day or to see
yeah,
my wife. And so there's just this purity about animals, and a connection on a different level. So I love
mm.
that.
Yeah, no, it's true. And
Yeah.
it's easy to love them. It's easy to open
Yeah.
our hearts to them because they're not going to hurt us
Yeah, absolutely.
emotionally, psychologically. Like,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
they're just all about the love.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope more people, find somebody local, or local-ish, who is doing, animal assisted work or equine work. I think it will do wonders, particularly for those who have kids. So
Yeah, no, it is. And
amazing.
it's beautiful work, and I'm very honored and privileged to be able to do it and be part of it, and very honored to work at Amaru and have the opportunity to do all of this. So thanks to Belinda and Amaru for providing that in my life, let alone the amazing benefits for all of our wonderful clients. It's
Absolutely.
great work. It's wonderful to be part of it. Thank you for having us on and having a chat about it all.
Amazing. Thanks, Kristy.
Thanks, Sam.
We hope you enjoyed joining us inside the therapy room. Thanks for listening.